Today's video is all about understanding divorce effects on children and also about putting those effects in perspective. If you Google up that phrase, divorce effects on children, a whole bunch of really scary stuff comes up. So today what we're going to do is break that down, put it in perspective, and really give you back some control over how divorce is going to impact your children. I'm Rachael Sloan. I'm a divorce coach for men. I'm also a master NLP practitioner, a certified life coach, and the creator of Better Beyond Divorce, which is my unique approach to divorce recovery designed specifically around the needs of men. I help my clients move from the shock, betrayal, loneliness, and anger that they feel during and after their divorce into a place of calm, clarity, and confidence. In these videos, I intend to help you do the same. Today, we're focusing on divorce with children, specifically on understanding divorce effects on children, but we are going to do it in a little bit of a different way than you might be used to. We're going to look at this through a lens that empowers you to actually help your kids instead of leaving you feeling overwhelmed and powerless on the sidelines. Make sure you stick around to the end of this video because I'm also going to share 2 strategies for co-parenting with an uncooperative or difficult ex. As you watch, go ahead and drop a note in the comments and let me know what parts of this video resonate with you. I try to respond to all of your comments and they also help me create better content for you in the future. All right, let's dive into divorce with kids. You've read the statistics, right? The list of divorce effects on children include behavioral problems, mental health problems, poor performance in school, increased risks for addiction behaviors later in life, increased chance of poor relationship outcomes in their own marriages. It goes on and on. I need you to go ahead and just press the pause button, and we're going to make a big mindset shift together right now. All of these commonly listed divorce outcomes for children are based on statistics. Statistics are useful. They help us recognize patterns. They help us identify areas where we can make societal level changes that will increase positive outcomes for a large number of people. What statistics don't do is accurately predict the outcome for any given individual. The fact that 70% of prison inmates grew up in broken homes does not mean that your children are going to end up in jail. If you look at divorce effects on children through the lens of statistics, which is how it's usually presented when you're looking for information on this, your brain is going to freak out. You're going to read things like, my child is 300 times more likely to develop a mental disorder. Your brain's going to go off the charts. You're going to go into overwhelm. You're not going to know what to do. Statistics paint a picture that is useful in some contexts, but it's not a close-up perspective. It's like a 30,000-foot aerial view of what's going on. Let's paint a picture of divorce effects on kids that's actually relevant to your life, to this ground level view where you're actually living in real life with your own children and going through your own divorce. We're going to do that by looking at divorce effects on children through an attachment lens. Attachment science is essentially the study of human love. There's actually been a lot of research done in this area, and it's come up with some pretty powerful results. So attachment science is the basis for emotionally focused therapy, which is the most thoroughly tested, empirically validated, and effective form of couples and family therapy that exists today. If attachment science accurately predicts how couples can find ways to connect through conflict, usually by accessing, expressing, and working through deep childhood emotional wounds, it can probably help us understand the effects of divorce on our children as well. So instead of giving you a whole list of statistics to frighten you about how divorce is going to impact your child, I'm going to give you 8 lessons that we can learn about divorce effects on children through an attachment lens. The first attachment lesson on divorce with children is that for children, abandonment is a life and death issue. Children are dependent. They're absolutely dependent. They die if they are left alone. And that's actually what abandonment means. A lot of adults actually still experience feelings of abandonment in their grown-up relationships through a childhood lens, which is a big part of the reason that loss and divorce can feel so terrifying. That survival brain from childhood equates being left with death. But for adults, for us grown-ups, that's actually just a psychological illusion and one that we can work through. Adults don't get abandoned. Adults get left. But children do get abandoned. This is life and death for them. So when we're talking about the psychological effects of divorce on children, we have to keep this in mind. If a child perceives that they are being abandoned, it is going to trigger a survival reaction in that child. And that survival reaction is actually what brings us to the second lesson attachment science has to teach us about divorce effects on children. That second lesson is that your child's misbehavior is an attempt to survive by forcing you to parent them. Not parent them in the sense that they need you to discipline them. Parent them in the sense that they need you to stay. Remember, a child who perceives they've been abandoned is going to automatically go into survival reactions. Those survival reactions might look a lot like bad behavior. For instance, you might see a child say or do reckless things in an attempt to trigger a protective reaction. They want to trigger your desire to care for them, to protect them. A child in survival mode trying to protect themselves from abandonment might also act out with temper tantrums, breaking rules, causing problems, getting into fights, doing things to try to get your attention and draw your focus back to them so that you remember, hey, yeah, this kid is here and I'm supposed to be taking care of them. A child in survival mode might also become incredibly clingy, needy, and anxious. They might start to develop a separation anxiety where they can't be apart from one or both parents without getting really distressed. Not all misbehaviors come from a survival reaction. They can actually come from a child not knowing how to handle really difficult or painful emotions. And that takes us to the third lesson that attachment science has to teach us here about divorce with kids. Lesson number 3 is that divorce triggers powerful emotions in children, and they need to be taught how to handle those. This doesn't just come naturally. Trust me, the fact that most of us adults don't actually know how to process and talk about our emotions in a healthy way, that's the reason that there's so many divorces in the first place. Kids need help with this. And that is your job as a parent, which means that you need to first learn how to process and express your own emotions in a healthy way so that you can then model that and guide your children through the same process. What that actually looks like is going to vary pretty considerably based on your child's age and their ability at this moment to already express and talk about their emotions. And that takes us to lesson number 4 about divorce effects on children. Age makes a difference. As we age, as we grow from infancy through our teenage years into adulthood, our nervous system grows and develops. Our brains grow and develop. As we get older and become more independent, some of those abandonment pressures lessen. What all of this means is that kids of different ages are going to respond to divorce a little differently. A younger child is more likely to experience fear and a sense of abandonment or rejection, whereas an older child, a teenager, is more likely to respond with anger, hostility, blame, and quite likely depression, which is often the result of suppressed or held back hostility and anger. Divorce with kids of all ages requires 2 things from you: curiosity and compassion. The details of how those things are expressed are going to vary a little bit based on their age. A younger child is going to need more comfort, physical contact, and reassurance, whereas an older child is going to need honesty, transparency, and a rationale for this process of how to manage emotions so that they can see the value in it. What all children of divorce need is you. They need their parent to be there for them. They need your curious and loving presence. And now I know for some of you, you're not in a position where you can physically be there for and with your kids, but honestly, that doesn't matter. You can be a curious and loving presence in their life on the telephone, by text message, and even by snail mail letters. What attachment science shows us is that you have a much greater impact on their well-being than you might have been aware of. The next lesson that attachment science has to teach us about divorce effects on children is a painful one for most parents. This lesson is that children tend to blame themselves. Attachment science is really good for helping us understand this. It's a parent's number 1 job, genetically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, to care for their child. The child knows that, not consciously. Their physiology knows that, their genes know that, their nervous system knows that. So when a parent stops caring for that child, when that child perceives that they're being abandoned or rejected, they have to try to make sense of it. Why would that happen? Their nervous system, their very genes know that it shouldn't happen. It's not in the parent's best interest. It's not in the child's best interest. It's not in the interest of their genetic material. The conclusion that the child brain draws with their very limited perspective, their very limited experience and resources is, well, if my mom doesn't love me, if my dad won't care for me, it must be because there's something wrong with me. Why else would a parent abandon their number one job? If a child experiences this awareness on a deep emotional level, no amount of guidance counselors saying it's not your fault is going to help. That child needs emotional support to process those feelings. Those feelings need to be heard. They need to be able to speak about them and put them out there. They need to be validated. And then you need to prove them wrong through your actions, not through your words. Keep this in mind as we look at the next lesson attachment science has to teach us about divorce effects on children. Kids tend to see their parents as part of themselves. So divorce can get nasty easily. But when that happens, it can be so easy to blame the other parent, to get frustrated with the other parent, and to do that in front of your children. The reality is that your child loves that other parent. And more than that, they perceive that other parent as being part of who they are. So when you reject the other parent, the child experiences that as you rejecting them. Are you starting to see a pattern here? What attachment science teaches us is that all of the problems children experience after divorce come from a loss of safety and connection. Events happen during divorce that make the child feel unsafe, right? Feel abandoned, feel like their lives are in danger, or makes them feel disconnected from one or both parents. All the rest of that, all those statistics on mental health, on behavioral issues, on their chances of success in future relationships, all of that, that's just the result of that loss of safety and the loss of connection. Which brings us to the last and maybe most important lesson we can learn from attachment science about divorce with kids. There's nothing wrong with your kids. Even if your child is already one of those statistics, if they're already acting out, if they're already doing poorly in school, if they're already have been diagnosed with depression or ADHD, they're not broken. There's nothing wrong inherently with this child. They are just suffering the repercussions of a loss of safety and a loss of connection. They just don't know how to get back to a place where they feel safe and connected and loved. An important part of this is that there's nothing wrong with you either. If your child is feeling that way, you're not bad, you're not broken either. It's not your fault. There was no manual for this, right? Nobody taught you how to process your emotions in a healthy way, how to talk about these things. You are likely still carrying around a lot of your own unprocessed emotions and fear from your childhood. I know this may feel heavy, but this is actually really, really good news. The divorce itself is not the problem. It is the feelings of fear and rejection that led to all of those statistics, not divorce itself, which means you have a lot of power to support your children right now and to minimize the ongoing effects the divorce has on them. Your presence, your curiosity, your compassion, all of that matters deeply to your children. But what about your ex? What if she is not cooperating with this? Are you watching this video and all these things I'm saying are just confirming your worst fears that she's ruining things for your kids? In just a moment, I'm going to give you 2 strategies that are going to help you deal with an uncooperative or difficult ex in co-parenting. But first, I want to just give a quick review of the 3 key takeaways that I hope you walk away from this video aware of. There's nothing wrong with your child. There's nothing wrong with you. And you have a lot more power than you realize. If you consistently show up for your children with curiosity and compassion, it will make a huge difference for them. What about your ex? What if she is just not on board with any of this? My first strategy for you for co-parenting with a difficult or uncooperative ex is to stay in your own lane. Stay focused on your own parenting. Do you guys remember that old adage? It's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is your mantra. And this is not flippant, you guys. This is absolutely essential. Remember what I said about abandonment being life and death for children? That's how it feels for them. So it is for them, which means they need you. They need you to be focused on them, not on her. So when you get caught up in your own brain thinking about what a horrible parent she is, how she's ruining things for your kids, how you can't control what she does, when you get all worked up, you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel helpless. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel worried. All of that emotional stress is taking your attention, your focus away from your kids. When you are feeling stressed and angry, it's really hard to show up with curiosity and compassion. Your kids need you to stay in your own lane. Second strategy, it's a little bit harder and it's going to take a little work, but it can be incredibly effective and it is such a gift to give to your children. The second strategy is show up for your ex the same way, consistently, with curiosity and compassion. She might hate you. She might blame you. She might be mean. She might say horrible things. She might try to attack you in all kinds of different ways. So I know what I'm asking you to do right now is not going to be easy. You can shine the attachment lens on her, just like you do for your kids. Her misbehavior is not really so different from theirs, but that doesn't mean that you give up boundaries. That doesn't mean you give in to her demands or do whatever she wants. But that's not what compassion is, and that's not what it is for your kids either. Boundaries are still a really important part of good parenting. Compassion is about your attitude. It is about the presence and the energy that you bring to every interaction. The more consistently that you show up, the more opportunities you give her to step up and co-parent with you. She might do that, and she might never do that. That is her choice. That falls into the realm of things you cannot control. What you can learn to control is how you show up every time. If this video helped you, please click the like button and please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any new content. The next video coming out is going to be about the specifics of coping with divorce effects on children as a father. As soon as that video is live, I'm going to post a link to it here. You can also turn on notifications to make sure that you don't miss any of my latest content. Thanks for being here.